Hello and welcome back to another Gunpla review. Today we're taking a look at the high-grade Universal Sentry Gelgoog Jager from 0080 War in the Pocket. I don't really know why they made a Gelgoog that's supposed to be a sniper type, but they did, and honestly I do quite like the design. It's sort of a halfway point between the Gelgoog and the Gabaldi beta, which obviously means that I'm a fan of it, but this kit is part of the early 0080 line of high grades, so it's a little bit crusty. Well, we'll get into it. So let's start off this review by, as always, taking a look at the articulation. Alright, starting off with the head, I will point out I did a tiny minor modification, just to raise the neck polycap up by like a millimeter, because it didn't really have much of a neck, and honestly it couldn't get further than like this. And it's clearly not supposed to be that bad, because every shot they show in the promotional work actually has the full range. So basically you just need to cut out a tiny bit of the plastic holding the hinge on. I'll put up a picture of the instructions so you can tell what I'm talking about, and that just raises it up with I put a little bit of tape underneath it just to boost it, and now it's completely fine. And yeah, not a lot of forward and back either way, but at least it can actually rotate now, which is important given, you know, the rifle. But yeah, there's not a ton of movement going on there, and the mono eye isn't movable since the eye itself is a separate piece. Now, moving on to the shoulders, yeah, that's kind of the thing about this. That's it. I mean, it does get a full rotation, but yeah, not even a full 90 degrees out to the side. There's really not a lot of movement going on there. Now, there is a rotation at the bicep, though when you end up turning it, the actual bicep doesn't move. I mean, it can, but it doesn't want to, so it's a little bit annoying, but it doesn't actually affect anything. Less than 90 at the elbow, but it's close enough that I'm not really going to complain. And the wrist, as always, is on a ball joint. Now, moving on to the waist. That's it. There's no ab crunch at all. That wiggle is just from where the polycap is placed in there. You don't actually get any movement out of it, which is unfortunate. Really, a sniper should have a lot more movement in the shoulders and the chest for posing, but you can still get a few poses out of it. The front skirts aren't ball jointed on, which you wouldn't think is a problem. They are separated on the runner, by the way. But since they're just a swivel, when you bring them up, you get a massive gap there, and also it means that there's not a lot of movement out to the front with the hip. If this had been on a ball joint, you could get the angle up this way and get the leg out a bit further, but it could be worse. These are just on hinges, and they're so short they don't get in the way anyway, but, you know. Hips are ball jointed, which is, you know, pretty standard for the time, though I will give them credit that the cutout they did is pretty nice. You get, you know, about 45 degrees out to the side, which is standard, but you do actually get a pretty nice rotation, you know, for the thigh. Maybe a little bit better, but, you know, it's a ball joint. This is kind of all you can get away with. You do get a decent kick out to the front, and if you get the knee up over, you get a little bit further, and I mean as far back as you can before it hits the back skirt, which is pretty obviously static. As for the knee, it's actually not that bad. You get about 90 degree bend. It's just the lower leg is so massive that it doesn't really look like it does much. Unfortunately, this kit kind of has weird proportions going on with the legs, where the thigh is a lot smaller than it should be, so you end up not really getting a very dynamic movement when you bend the knee. And finally, for the feet, just a ball joint. That is it. So this thing is kind of lacking in articulation. You can still get a few good poses out of it, but you're not going to be able to do anything crazy. Now, getting into accessories, let's, as always, start off with the sticker sheet, and by extension, the color correction. You get the little emblem for up on the shoulder. You get 522 and 523 for here on the chest. And this black is actually for the mono Y. I fully painted this thing, so I didn't use any of the stickers. I may end up using these at some point, maybe if I top coat it, but... Now let's get into the color correction, because this thing does not go easy on you. Most of it is fairly reasonable. A lot of red for verniers, dark gray, and then a red trim for these. Same thing for these ones on the shoulder, even though you can barely tell the difference between the reds. Please focus. There we go. Yeah, you can barely tell that it's been painted red, but it is supposed to be a different shade, so... Then these need to be painted gray, and I just did a light wash on them to bring in a bit of shadow. These are red. Yeah, this thing has a lot of verniers. Focus, please. There we go. Yeah, you get these ones here, these ones here, that one, both of those little ones. You have to paint the gray around these, red, dark gray. You have to do the brown trim on this, as well as the actual verniers themselves. And of course, those 5 in there, and then 3 in each leg, which, yeah, there you go. So, a lot of verniers. 30 to 35 there's a lot of red circles on this thing. And then we get to the slightly stupider painting. Obviously the black. And I did paint the mono Y with a slight pink, just because I don't really like the shade that they went with for the plastic, but it is color separated, you don't have to paint that. However, the collar of the chest needs to be painted, because for some reason they thought it was a good idea to make it part of the gray neck area, even though it's not supposed to be gray, and they could have very easily molded it to not be like that, so it's just a really odd decision on their part. And then we get to the bottom of the feet, which is entirely reddish brown, I guess you'll call it, plastic. So you have to paint all the pink, and the gray, and the red. Why didn't they just mold this in pink? It would have looked better stock if it was just completely pink, and it would have been easier to paint. Just a really strange decision on their part, but yeah. Also, I will say, I don't think the feet look very good when they're not painted, so yeah, I'd recommend painting at least the feet and the collar, even if you don't want to do all the red on these. Now, getting into the actual accessories, not very many. You get a holding hand with nothing to hold, since this doesn't have any melee weapons. You get a trigger finger hand, and you get this kind of ugly, to be honest, holding hand. What is going on with this thumb? Seriously? Looks like a lipstick or something. It's really ugly. The fingers look fine. I don't know why the thumb looks so weird, but otherwise, you get the reason for these 2 hands: the beam machine gun, which it uses as a sniper rifle. No, I don't get it either. But this is pretty blatantly based on, I can't remember, it's a real weapon, but yeah, basically just strapped a scope to it, which is offset, by the way. It is intentionally offset. It's supposed to look like that. Bit of a weird choice, but I mean, it works. Also, it does have a bipod, but ow, it's just molded on, doesn't move. And you do have to paint the scope on this. Doesn't even give you a sticker for it, which, whatever. Now this hand does actually hold like this area pretty well. It actually sits in there nicely. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the actual trigger finger hand, because it's a little bit on the loose side. Thankfully, you can brace the stock up against the arm, so it's not that big of a deal. Also, I will point out these ball joints, the sockets are actually really well held in there. Let's just get this in. It's, you know, stock standard, just pop it apart, put the weapon in, close it up around it. And you might have noticed there's a bit of tape in there. That's because this is a bit wobbly. And here's kind of the big issue I have, is with the limited articulation, the only thing this kit has to pose with is the rifle. And it can't hold it very well. It looks awkward when you bring it across the chest because there's no movement in the shoulders or in the chest. So really the best pose you're going to get is the shot of it holding up the machine gun in its arm and firing the Vulcan. Like, it doesn't look quite right when you bring this across the chest. It's kind of annoying. And as for a quick size comparison, this is a very bottom-heavy suit. It's not that much taller than the average high grade, and it's actually a lot slimmer than the regular Gelgoog. But because of that, the back skirt and lower legs are a lot bulkier. And so, like I said, it's very bottom-heavy. Though, again, it's not really that much taller than the average suit. It's about average height. Maybe a little bit higher, late when you're war size. So, to wrap this review up, the Gelgoog Jager is, it's kind of crusty, to be honest. It's not horrible, but it's kind of weak. The articulation is lacking, especially for a sniper. The proportions are kind of jank compared to what they're supposed to be, which is slightly a problem with the 0080 kits in general, but the Jaeger really suffers from it. The legs just look off. And it has stupid color and accuracy. I could forgive the insane color and accuracy on the feet if the collar... Why did they make the collar gray? It's such a weird choice. I don't get it. That said, it's not horrible. It's kind of crusty, but it's not horrible for the time. It's just underwhelming. If you don't mind painting to correct all the missing color, and you don't mind modding it a bit for the neck and maybe adding ball joints in the shoulders or the waist, or you know, if you don't mind doing some modifications if you feel like it, and removing the awful seam lines on the lower legs, by the way. Yeah, it's not overly expensive for what you get, so I can recommend it as long as you don't mind putting in the work. But anyway, that's been all for this review. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, it helps a lot. Subscribe for future reviews and watch my backlog. Go follow me on Twitter for updates, and consider supporting me on Patreon so I can keep bringing you reviews, just like this one. And as always, until next time, happy building.